with the end of a great World Cup, really, was certainly, I think, one of the greatest World Cup finals that we've ever seen. The players have to come back and get back to their clubs. It's a remarkable and difficult thing to do. They haven't had much time. There were 133 players from the Premier League in Qatar. We'll all be watching the Premier League, of course, because it's back in a big way in a few days' time. And we don't really know the effects it will have on the 133 players who were at the World Cup. But we know that they're not always positive. For example, Gabriel Jesus, who's done so well since he's moved to Arsenal, he is likely to be out until February with a knee injury. To discuss all of this, I'm joined now by John Giles and Liam Brady to finish off our World Cup coverage. John, players coming back to play in the Premier League now. There were 133 Premier League players at the tournament. Manchester City had 16. Arsenal had, I think, 11 or 10 actually. Spurs had 11. Chelsea 12. Manchester United had 13 players, and they have a game tonight in the Carabao Cup. If you go, John, and you take a chunk of 5 weeks, which is what the players have been with their national sides for, and you're at a World Cup, even if you're not playing, it presents fitness problems, doesn't it? And if you're playing, it's not an easy transition back to your club and straight back into football.
No, it's terrible, Eamon, because you find the lads come back, I think it catches up with you, Eamon.
Yes.
I think they'd be okay for a little while, but once they get into a few matches and then they're back into it again, training and the big matches they have, I think it's inevitable that they'll catch up with some of these players. Eamon. That's why you have a rest in the summer.
Exactly.
When you played all season and playing a lot of matches, times when I was at Leeds, we played 60-odd matches, and you couldn't wait to have a break.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
And now that they're going to a World Cup, these are all serious matches. These are not little friendly matches that they're playing in. These are big matches that these lads have been out playing in.
Yes.
So I think if they don't feel the effects straight away, I think when they get back playing a good few matches again in the Premiership, in the European competitions and that, I think it'll catch up on the players, Eamon.
Right. Liam, Arsenal, top of the league, doing very well. One of their best signings, really, for a long time has been Gabriel Jesus from Manchester City. He was with Brazil, got a bad knee injury, which you told me will keep him out until February. That's a blow to Arsenal, isn't it? A big one.
Huge, Eamon. Huge, because he's been one of the best players this season. He's been inspirational, and I think a lot of the players kind of rub off on the enthusiasm he brings to the team. So that was, if I had to pick one player that you didn't want to get injured coming back from the World Cup was Jesus.
Yes.
So it's a big blow for Arsenal, and looking across the board at the challengers for the Premier title, you would say that's the most damaging for any club was the injury to Jesus for Arsenal.
Yeah, and this is playing, for his country, for FIFA, no wages. The club that pays his wages are going to be the victims. There was another Arsenal player, Ben White, who came home, Liam, in the middle of the tournament. The reasons weren't given, but obviously things weren't right. So that's another. The other thing I'd like to ask both you and John is about Harry Kane and the scar tissue that may remain from missing that penalty. Now, he's a very strong character, Liam, and you'd expect him to come back all guns blazing. But Spurs had 11 players there, and he is a leader. I would say that Antonio Conte would have had a lot of worry in those 5 weeks that they were away.
Well, that's right. He had, if I'm not mistaken, he had 2 players go all the way. Romero, the Argentinian defender, and Lloris, the goalkeeper. So they've had an exhausting tournament.
Yeah, and also Liam, Ivan Perisic, the Croatian, who went all the way.
Yeah, he played all the games as well. Evan, that's correct. Yeah. He played 7 games as well. So, you'd be looking at Spurs might be a club that might pay for that. Certainly with Harry Kane, we'll have to watch and see how he's going to react. I thought he looked a little bit tired in the tournament anyway. A lot of these players who have been playing Champions League football, and they tried to fit a lot of Premier League matches in before they went.
Yes.
So they could get the season finished when they returned. There's question marks. But it could be a mixed bag. I mean, some of the lads went there and had a good rest in the heat. Yeah. Didn't play that much at all. Like, okay, I'll name one, Martinelli from Arsenal.
Yes.
He was in the Brazilian team. They went out in the quarterfinals. He only played bits and pieces of games. So he could come back fresh. You just have to wait and see,
Yeah, John, Jack Grealish should come back fresh because he only came on for a few minutes in the games. I don't really know what Gareth Southgate was doing with Grealish. But the thing about the situation like Martinelli's, or indeed Jack Grealish's, is do you lose your sharpness and your edge in that 5 weeks if you're not really competing? I mean, if you're doing too much, it's bad, like Perisic say for Croatia. But if you're doing too little, that's bad too, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no winning it, Eamon.
No.
If you're on that trip, as you say, if you're playing the matches, then good chance of being injured. If you're not playing in the matches, do you lose your fitness? It's just a no-brainer. I mean, for any manager with the players coming back now, they don't know how they're going to be.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not good. There's no positive in it that you could say the players that didn't play got a rest. They get a rest in a certain play, in a certain way, but they're away from home. They're away from their normal
routine
life and all the various things that go with that. I mean, they have to keep themselves fit. They have to do their training just in case they're asked to play. It's just, it was never on. It worked out very, very well for the people concerned because it was a good World Cup. But we'd have to see if there are any consequences now for the Premiership players and the managers.
Liam, Manchester United have a game tonight. They had 13 players away. Obviously, those players aren't fit. But it is a competitive game. It's in the Carabao Cup. They're under pressure to win a trophy. And that's one concern. The other concern is what the head man from FIFA, Gianni Infantino, said on Sunday night after the final. He said he thought the World Cup should be held every 3 years. He thought it should be held in the European winter. That is the same as it's been played now. And that's a promise, really, that this is going to happen every time there's a World Cup, and it's going to be World Cups more frequently now. He also wants to introduce a World Club competition. I think you told us the other day that would involve 32 clubs. Now, if we go on this road, Liam, the club system and the leagues and La Liga and Serie A and all of that, they're going to be in a mincer, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just piling on the games and piling on the competitions because it means money to them, Eamon. Why does he want it every 3 years and not every 4 years? It means he gets his money every 3 years.
Yeah.
That's what this thing is all about. But there will be, I think there will be huge protests from European clubs and the leagus to say, hang on a minute, now you're interfering. You've already interfered by having this Qatar World Cup in November, December. And we're not prepared to take it anymore. It's watch this space. I'm not too sure what's going to happen, but it'll be the players who pay the consequence of increasing competitions and increasing the amount of games, without any doubt.
Yeah, I mean, John, let's just take Chelsea. They had 12 players away. They were on a bit of a dodgy run anyway before they went to the World Cup. The club was in a bit of a mess. And I think it probably still is in a bit of a mess because of this new owner they have who's an American. We've seen with Jesus how Arsenal have been affected. Manchester City had 16 players away. Again, how they're going to be affected. But if it was like this every time, there was an outburst he made Infantino at the beginning of the tournament, when everyone was complaining about the workers who died building the stadiums and all of that. He said Europe should shut up. They gave us 3,000 years of misery, and they're entitled to 3,000 years of misery themselves. Now, people thought he was talking nonsense and all of that, but it seems to me that he's very keen to give this tournament, this great tournament, to other countries in that region, like Saudi Arabia, for example. So there's a game on here, isn't there, between what's best for football and the fans of the clubs in England, in Italy, in Spain, and what's best for Infantino and FIFA. And that game they're playing, it is a threat to football, isn't it?
Of course it is. I mean, this fella's just talking nonsense. There's a lot of corruption going on, Eamon, as we know.
Yeah.
This is all corruption from his point of view to get the matches where he wants them to go. But what I think will happen, Eamon, with the owners, we saw where the six in England were going to break away, and they were going to have their own competition, say the European Cup, instead of
the Super League,
what we have now, because they're paying the players. I mean, as you know, we spoke about before. You know, UEFA and FIFA and these places. These are situations that are in situations there. They get the run of the players to play for them without paying them.
Yeah.
The clubs are paying them.
Yes.
So the clubs are going to be in a position, in my opinion, all these Americans and that are buying the big clubs up in all over the world, Eamon, will say, we're going to break totally away from you.
Yes.
So you won't have it. They're paying the players, as we know. These clubs are paying the players. FIFA and UEFA are not paying the players.
No, they're not.
They're using the players who are not even their players. So they can run as many competitions as they like, and they'll make money from it. But I think the big clubs will react to this in Italy and Spain and all over the world, in England, to say, we're pulling out of it. We'll make our own league. And it's
Liam,
ridiculous.
Yeah, Liam, this situation with this new FIFA president, if he takes it in the direction that he's expressed a desire to do, it would really seriously damage a club like Arsenal, a club like Manchester United, Manchester City. Then collateral damage is the fans and the players. And it's a takeover, really. It's a takeover bid by FIFA for the game, isn't it?
Well, I think he's sticking his chest out on the back of a very successful World Cup.
Yeah.
Taking into account all the criticism that the World Cup had before it kicked off, really all the things we know about human rights, the amount of workers that died building stadiums, the treatment of those particular people, how poorly they were looked after and so forth, the living conditions. And then it was the LBGT rights.
Yes.
You know, all that came into play, and Infantino was sweating. But he's come out strong now, purely on the back that the World Cup was so successful, Eamon. And I think he's sticking his chest out, and it's saber rattling and things like that.
Yeah.
I don't see anything happening soon. And I agree with John. The clubs are the ones who are paying the players, and they'll have a huge say in things. But in the end, Eamon, it'll probably all come down to money and compromise and so forth.
Yeah.
Everyone's in the business now of making money, Eamon, in football. It's all changed at the very high end. So
yes,
we had the World Cup in November, December. Why? Because the Qataris managed to keep everybody happy with their money. They threw it around in enough places that everybody agreed to it. So I don't know how it's going to pan out, but I think Infantino's just flexing his muscles because on the back of a very successful World Cup.
Now, I want to go on and look at some of the Premier League games we have to come, and at the Premier League itself. Before I do, I should remind our listeners that this episode of The Stand is sponsored by Now Sports and Sports Extra. And you can get membership for Now to watch a Premier League game from as little as $11.99 $14.99. For a day membership, you can get it. You can sit there. If you've got your mates with you, you can split the cost. It's a brilliant way to watch a game of your own choice, and it's very, very inexpensive. But I want to move on with John and Liam and talk about some of the fixtures. John, the Premier League starts again. I mean, the Carabao Cup is on tonight. Manchester United are playing. I mean, obviously they don't have a full squad to select from. But if you're a manager like Ten Hag of Manchester United, and you've had 13 players away, and they're almost by definition your best players, and you have to go and win, it's no good, is it? You wouldn't be feeling happy.
Yeah, anything but, Damon. You know, that's what's happened with this particular situation, as we know. It was a great World Cup, but, you know, the players in Manchester United, you mentioned there, they're paying those players. They've got to bring them back. They've got to get into a competition straight away. So it's not good for them, or any of the club for that matter. It's their players that have gone away, could come back injured, like the lad at Arsenal. And no, there's no real benefits in it for the clubs, Eamon. Because they've got players now. Most, as we know, the players that were away in the World Cup won't be playing tonight, Eamon, and they have to be rested up. So it's a very difficult situation for any of the clubs, and they've got to put up with it now. But I think the clubs at some stage will, if it happens again, or it's likely to happen, that there'll be a big reaction. But in the meantime, you know, Manchester United and all the players that have come back from the World Cup just got to get on with it, Eamon. You've no other choice.
No, Liam, Arsenal play West Ham next Monday. That's just a few days' time. And I would say Mikel Arteta is really troubled or angry that he's lost Jesus. And, you know, West Ham is no stroll in the park. It's a London derby. And every game matters to Arsenal where they are now. I mean, just in the second half of the season, Liam, you know, they're top of the league. They have, Arteta's built something there, hasn't he? Or is in the process of building something?
Oh, for sure, yeah, for sure. Yeah, the signings at the start of this season have been excellent. They fitted in with the team. They've enhanced the team. They brought the team on, particularly Jesus, so he's going to be a big blow. I was half expecting that Arsenal will do something to try and rectify that situation in the transfer market when they can get players in again, which should be quite soon, I think, Eamon.
Yeah.
So I think they'll be active in the transfer market simply because they've got an advantage now. I think kicking off the season would have been very happy to finish in the top four.
Yes.
But the way the results have gone for other teams like Liverpool having a poor start to the season, Chelsea have been indifferent. They're really only looking at Tottenham and Manchester City as their competitors to win the league, you know.
Yep.
And I think everybody at Arsenal now is kind of thinking, we've got a chance, you know. There's a chance there, you know.
Yes.
If we could keep up the form we showed before the World Cup, we must have a big chance, because who knows, you know, what players are going to, how players are going to react coming back from this. Is De Bruyne going to be playing, you know, at his best for Manchester City?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Is Foden going to be able to pick it up again? So Arsenal have a great incentive just to knuckle down and get off to a good start. And West Ham at home, I think, is not a bad way to begin again, Eamon. You know,
right.
So I'd be hopeful that we could win that. Arsenal could win that.
That's actually the Monday night game.
It's boxing night. I mean, we're talking about fans there. They're just treating the fans terribly, you know.
Yes.
Boxing evening, 7:30 or St. Stephen's Day, to be having fans. There's no transport. There's strikes.
Yes.
There's all sorts of things going on, and they're asking fans to go to an evening match at 7:30 on St. Stephen's Day, or Boxing Day as it's called here.
Yeah, I mean the thing is to you, Liam, and to John. With everything we've talked about, ultimately it is the fans who are hurt, who are robbed, and who feel, and rightly feel, cheated by all this stuff that's going on with Infantino, with FIFA, with a World Cup in the middle of the season. It isn't right, John, is it? I mean, because without fans being treated properly, then the game can only suffer.
I mean, the fans have been treated very, very badly over the years, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a lot better now because we have they're in from the rain and the seats are better and all that carry on. I mean, in our time, in your time, certainly, you were at Old Trafford when I was at Old Trafford, and there was only one stand, and then the majority of the crowd were out in the rain in that, Eamon.
Yep.
They were queuing up from 8 o'clock in the morning with at Anfield and that, and we saw that. Like, unfortunately, they're taken for granted. And there's no doubt. The fans are taken for granted because the clubs and the officials know they love the game and they put up with all sorts of nonsense. That's very bad for them. Unfortunately, it's a tradition, if we call it that, or the history of the game. They're looked after better now with the conditions than they were years and years ago, but they're still taken for granted in a big way.
What about Liam's point, John, about Arsenal? They have a little cushion. City had 16 players away. Certainly in the case of Kevin De Bruyne, he had a very bad experience with that Belgian team. And he got involved in a row with Vertonghen, the defender. Before they kicked the ball out there, he was asked what their chance of winning the World Cup. And he said, we've no chance, we're too old. He's something we've always been suspicious of him, haven't we? That his temperament, in some way, he can be brilliant, he can be a match winner, but he can sulk as well.
Oh, in a big way, Eamon. Yeah. I mean, the incident in the World Cup.
Yeah, it was a bit. It was a low blow to the. Yeah,
it was outrageous, Eamon. Yeah. I mean, he said, I'm doing it on my own.
Yeah.
I have to have my players to back me up, or words to that effect.
Yeah.
He said, I can't do it. I can't do it on my own.
Yeah.
They've got to step up, these players. You're talking about his colleagues, Simon.
Yeah.
And I've always felt that about him playing. He's a very, very talented lad, as we know, Eamon. But he gets the huff. I see him on the pitch if somebody gives him a bad ball and that, he's shaking his shoulders or he's doing something like that. I mean, we're talking just a tiny bit about Messi. Messi's the best player in the world. He never does that with his colleagues.
No, never.
If somebody gives him a bad ball, he gets on with it and he does his best to do it, like most players do. Yep. But De Bruyne doesn't. Actually, Belgium were a disaster and have been a disaster for years. But he was right in the middle of it this year. That was a little headline I saw.
Yep.
I need help from them.
Yeah.
Like, in other words, I'm doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
And all these idiots are not giving me a hand. It's outrageous. But anyway, that's my thing on him.
I'm going to let you guys go in a minute. Liam, just John and I haven't sucked you into the De Bruyne argument, but he's loved by the media in England, and then you have to say by former players who are now analysts on Sky or whatever. But there is this flaw, and what he said at the World Cup before the ball was kicked, he should be a leader in that Belgian team, shouldn't he? And he should be, come on, lads, let's have a go. But he didn't seem that keen.
No, that's right. He got off on the wrong foot, certainly did, and there was trouble in the camp, and I think that manifested itself in their games.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what he's like when he comes back.
Yeah,
he's looked like he's playing with the hump, as John said. He's got his body language is not being good either for Belgium or for Manchester City, and it's going to be interesting. I'm obviously hoping he comes back and he doesn't really bother because it gives Arsenal more chance if they lose, if they haven't got Kevin De Bruyne at his best. But we won't know, Eamon, until we're a couple of games back in.
Okay, Liam and John, Brady and John Giles, two of the greats we've ever had in the game of soccer anywhere in the world. And it's a real treat to have Liam and John